What's up, everybody? We're back with another episode of the Dragzine podcast. I'm your host, Senior Associate Editor Brian Wagner. Joining me once again, Mike Galimi. Mike, what's going on?
Hey, Brian, how's it going, man? Just happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
No problem, man. You're like in like the 3 or 4 timer club at this point on the show. That's like being on Saturday Night Live multiple times. It's an honor.
Well, I'm always happy to talk with you and sit down and discuss drag racing. You know that.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's funny that I like bringing someone on like you on the show because you are versed in all kinds of stuff. Because we'll have people that are just into one form of racing, but you and I are a lot alike. That we pretty much like anything loud, fast, and dangerous.
Pretty much, yeah. That's how it works.
And I think that's for me that makes the sport more immersive and fun when I can pretty much, as long as at a racetrack, I'm happy.
Exactly.
And it's nice to be somewhat back to normal-ish, to be able to actually go to races and not have to worry about Johnny Law showing up and shutting us down this year.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah. I think the last 14 months ago, we were definitely in a unique time in our lives and obviously in business and our careers with drag racing seemingly coming to a stop. But I would agree that we're back pretty solidly right now.
Yeah, and it's cool, like when I went to the Night Under Fire, it was like absolutely the most packed I've ever seen. Totally business as usual. People had a great time. Had to take all the sharp objects away from Bill based on the issues that they had between a jet truck catching on fire and the power going out. But they powered through that, and you wouldn't have known that they had any issues.
I mean, those guys are professionals, so I'm not surprised that they rolled with it and still made the show happen.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of stuff at a racetrack, but I am now officially adding seeing a jet truck burning out of control as a new one. And I can say I can go another day without seeing that happen again, because that's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, we've got a guy on staff who's 40 plus years in the business of drag racing, and still to this day, there's something at least once or twice a year that he's never seen before. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just the sport that we're in, and just expect the unexpected.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything this year that's happened at a NMR or NMCA race that kind of sticks out in your mind so far? Like, that's a new one. The jet truck is my bar for this year. What's yours so far?
Nothing as exciting as the jet truck, but yeah, we have our bumps in the road, and it's just how you work through them is how you kind of push forward through it.
Yeah, the other thing I saw when I was up there was I saw a guy actually in a big tire car let go of the button, and something in the U joint area failed so spectacularly that it took the front of the case off. Plus, it looked like it had a wishbone style suspension under it, because there was bars for the wishbone hanging underneath the car when they were moving it. So that was another new one that I've never seen that much destruction before.
Yeah, I think of how we closed out the 2020 season with Kevin McMullen's accident at Bowling Green, and chalk that one up as to how did this happen? I mean, going back, we kind of figured it all out. It kind of rode off a bar in the back, but for those who don't remember it, he left the starting line with a Coyote stock car, a low 10-second car, gets up on the push bar on the back bumper and pirouettes over onto his side, slides down the track, and then gets bumped up on top of the wall. Pretty bizarre. Thankfully, he's back racing this year, and it looked a whole lot worse than what it was.
That was a crazy incident, because I was actually at that event wrenching on James Lawrence's car as we were tearing it apart for the umpteenth million time. And we're like, man, something bad happened, and Scott, the other crew guys, go see how long you think the delay is going to be. So I wander over to the track and I look and I get back and they're like, so what's happening? I'm like, there's a car laying on the wall. Like it rode it like a skateboard.
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I think we got some time to get this done, because it's bad when all of like the track crews kind of stared at something. You put the little like voice bubbles above them. They're all sitting there thinking, how are we going to fix this one?
I remember walking up on the scene, and Gene Bergstrom and Kurt Johnson are standing there kind of like looking at it, both of their wheels turning on, okay, how are we going to get this thing off the wall now? And I kind of look at them, look at the cars, like, you know what, I'm just going to fade off into the bushes over here and let these guys handle this one.
Yeah, but Mike's going, this is definitely not my wheelhouse. I'm just gonna go over here and
Yeah.
because yeah, that's one of those deals. You know it's bad when the track crew calls for a forklift, a front end loader, or a skid steer to pick up a vehicle.
Yeah. Yeah. And as many big straps as you could find.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Get all the big straps you can, get the
Yeah.
skid steer,
Yeah.
and get a block and tackle. And the guys on the starting line are probably the radios going, "Oh, this doesn't sound like fun." N- Now, with all that being said, the drag racing world is constantly changing and evolving all the time. And kind of, we have the ability to, like I always say, to be in the catbird seat and kind of see all these changes and things that are going on. And, let's say, what are the three biggest things that you see that are like the big ticket items going on in the sport right now?
I mean, there's a lot. There's always something going on, right? It's like life. I think right out of the gate, something short term. Wes Bucket alluded to it on his show a couple weeks ago, but three amazing night of fires on the same weekend. You had Norwalk, the one you were at. US 131 had their Northern Nationals, which is the same concept, the booked in show, top fuel and jet cars and whatnot. And in Firebird Raceway in Idaho, they do their incredible, nostalgia funny car and nitro show and all of that. And all three were packed, ready to rock. And it shows the strength of the sport that it's not just the pro show of NHRA that can put nitro down the track and make a show out of it. And I think a lot of other tracks are starting to look at it and say, hey, we can do the same thing as these guys. Now, those are all legacy events, but you could see, Island Dragway had a fantastic, nostalgia funny car race, I think a month or two ago. And some of these smaller facilities are really jumping on and putting a great crowd in the stands with a booked in show.
Yeah, I 110% agree. And I think that tracks need to do more of these shows. They need to do more dog and pony shows. End of discussion.
Right. And, there's an economic, impact on it. There's a positive one, but you also have to put a lot of money up front. So I think for some of the smaller facilities, it may be a little more challenging, but I think when done properly, the risk versus reward is fantastic for the track operator.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that even if you did a quick 8 pro mod show with some top dragsters, and like you said, you scale it to what you're able to do, people will come check that out 110%.
Yeah. And these are traditional shows. I mean, this is not some new idea. This is not some new concept. When Englishtown was running drag racing, they would do 3 or 4 of these in a year. Funny car spectacular, a jet cars under the lights or something like that. I forget the names of them, but there would be a Wednesday night booked in show. You get there at 5 or 6, and by 10 o'clock you're headed home.
Yeah. Todd Martin talked about that on this show about that at Tulsa. They try to do one thing a month to bring a big crowd in. Different
Right.
kind of shows to bring people. You can't do it every week because people can't afford it. But if you can get different groups of people in once a month, it builds that base for people to come back more often.
Yeah, and I think that's something that people who aren't involved in drag racing in terms of operations or promotion or whatnot, don't understand that there can be such thing as too much drag racing, right? You need to balance your schedules at these facilities and have that, like you said, like that once a month big deal, but you don't want to fatigue your fan market. You also don't want to fatigue your bracket racers. If you have something great, you don't want to fatigue it, and you need to have a great balance of events that hit different niches within the drag racing market.
Yeah, and Milan, thankfully it looks like they're going to be opening back up at their Friday night series. They would do a
Yeah.
Friday night race, and I was always shocked when we went up there for a Friday night show how many people would come out to watch that. And then they do the Saturday night series, or sometimes they do the Friday deal into the Grudge No Time stuff on a Saturday. And it's brilliant because the Friday to Saturday deal like that, two different crowds are going to show up.
Yeah, yeah, and Cecil County is a fantastic example of a great series that a single track runs, and over time has built a great following, has a great fan base. Yellow Bullet Nationals is essentially just a massive explosion for their streetcar drags that they do. With it used to be Outlaw 10.5, now it's the Pro 275 stuff and X 275 and Ultra and all these great fantastic index categories.
Right on. So what's another big thing that you kind of looking at your big board that you see going on in the world of
Oof.
racing?
Man, I think we'd be ignorant not to mention, the RPM Act and the big step up that SEMA and PRI have made in the last 6 to 8 months on that promotion, and really the activity of EPA within our industry. I know on the hardcore race side, we think we're immune to it, but the fact is that we're not, and we all have to come together as an industry to help fight against overreach. And I think PRI and SEMA have done a great job as being the ringleaders to this program.
Yeah, totally. That's again something where it takes a lot of voices, I think,
Yeah.
like good shouting, not, terrible
Yeah.
curse words, but like a very organized push to make that known. And I've constantly posted on my social media anytime I see a call to action about it. I think we all need to do that to keep that rolling to make sure that our industry stays safe across the
Yeah.
board.
And SEMA makes it really easy for you to contact your federal representatives, and they've got these tailored forms that you just basically have to input your personal information, and it will contact the appropriate people with the appropriate letter, the bill name, and an explanation. And they make it super easy, but they also give you the option of modifying that to put your own 2 cents in. And I want to say it was about 1.5 million letters have been sent into representatives in Washington, D.C. from around the country. And that's just a massive uptick compared to where they were. I think it was 3 years ago that I went down to DC as part of the rally, and one of the items we had talked about was the RPM Act, but it didn't have the push like it does today.
It's amazing what can be done with technology and the way that they can parse all that down to and make it easy. Like you said,
Yeah.
you can send it out as is, you can modify it, and that's an extremely powerful tool for our industry.
Yeah, yeah, and we're very fortunate to have a group that gets it, understands it. They're all have a vested interest in seeing the industry continue to thrive and continue to have record years. And I think the RPM Act is the first step in helping ensure that.
Absolutely. And what's another thing that's kind of on your big board that you think's big going on in the world of drag racing?
Well, I mean, I think it's one of the topics you wanted to bring up, but without a doubt, the no prep NHRA radio banter that's been going on in the last week or so. I think that's always fun, always interesting to see people's different comments and views on it. And I mean, WWE has made an empire out of people hating each other. So it's to have an enemy across the side. It's fun to see Stevie get involved, Stevie Fast Jackson and a lot of the drivers on No Prep Kings kind of fire back. And, I don't think it'll ever come to fruition, but, it would be fun to see Stevie jump into that world and really kind of take on those guys. And I think, careful what you wish for type of thing. I think there was a bunch of NHRA Pro Mod racers who thought the same thing about Stevie, 4 or 5 years ago, and here he is with 2 or 3 NHRA World Championships, behind his name. So it would be fun.
That's a great transition to my next question. We'll start out with the no prep side of things because that again continues to grow and grow. I've been to several big no prep events, and I've been to no prep kings. I've been to some smaller events, and I am a fan. Not gonna lie, it's probably one of the most electric atmospheres I've ever been to in drag racing, hands down. Like outside of Night Under Fire or maybe one of Donald's races when that the South Georgia is rocking, but at National Trail Raceway they put 12,000 people in the seats there.
Right.
I've never seen that track that packed since the ADRL was giving away free tickets, and
Right.
it's a different scene, it's a different demographic, but they are extremely passionate about no prep racing and honestly drag racing in general. I see nothing wrong with like you said, a little bit of a banter going on.
Yeah, and I think above all, the overarching story is that goes back to all these tracks are having now another event that's going to be packed, and great for their bottom line. And at the end of the day, they share drag racing, and that's it. One is a TV reality show, and the other is a racing sanctioning body, and they share some similarities, but the two businesses are completely different. So I think it's really hard to compare them. But these tracks, like you said, Columbus, National Trail Raceway, that's a fantastic financial opportunity for them. And they were at Epping, New Hampshire, where there's a national event, and this. So now you have a second really great draw for your community, and that's your vendors, your sponsors, all of the stuff that these tracks rely on to survive. This all benefits those guys, and I think that's really good opportunity for facilities if they can get a No Prep Kings race.
And even beyond no prep kings, it's funny that I think people keeps getting lost in the mix that they think they equate no prep racing as nothing but no prep kings. That's no farther from the truth. You've got some of these mid to small size events, a big event like a Bounty Hunters, Outlaw Armageddon, Winter Meltdown, the countless, backwards track racing stuff, that dig or die event that Manny Bajing and Bill Lutz went to. There's a lot of opportunities for these racers to come out to do these things. And I think it ties back to, Stevie's thumping his chest a little bit. Yeah, because he wants to get a no prep kings action. Go to one of these smaller races and you might get humbled in a hurley just as easy.
Well, I mean, I think it's I mean, it's small tire racing, right? It's been going on since the '90s. It just keeps reorganizing into different styles of how you pull it off. And right now, especially in the small tire side, like you said, the dig or die, where they had that 100,000. I think they're going to do a $250,000 race. I think there's another 100 or 1,000 later in the fall. But in any event, so the running the backside of the drag strip, it's nothing new. I remember when at first, I mean, it was probably 15 years ago, 16 years ago at least. I remember seeing that happen. But like you said, just the attention on it is gotten significantly greater. And in small tire racing, there's always that equalizer of traction, right? So that you kind of have the have and have nots. You have an incredibly prepped track, or even the no prep kings, which it's considered no prep, but it's definitely better than the other side of the track. And that limited traction does give the little guy an opportunity to run with the bigger guys. And Manny, like you said, had gone down to that event, and you would think, okay, well, here's Manny, but 420 car, easy, and he went out, I think, second round or first round. So it does give the little guy an opportunity to do well, and when you have the little guy engaged, that's where your big numbers come from in the car count.
Yeah, it's crazy the amount of cars. Even here again, coming back to trails here locally, we see it. They had a big backwards event that got unfortunately rained out, but at the same time, you have like Marion, a small local track that has a no prep series that
Right.
not only pulls in a lot of racers, it pulls in spectators. Little KD Dragway in Southern Ohio, the track that goes uphill. They had to close the gates down because there's too many people in there. You cannot deny the popularity of that form of racing.
Yeah, no, and it's great. It's great to see tracks recognizing that, and and giving their local crowd an opportunity to race in it.
And another thing that I was kind of going to dovetail into this was, the on the more the prep style thing, the streetcar type events, so, like your streetcar takeovers and, other events like that. I went to two streetcar takeover events this year and they were packed with not only fans but racers. And it's interesting again to see that you're starting to see that pendulum swing back to more of the streetcar style events, but this time around it's interesting to see OEM cars showing up with drag radios, laying down good passes, and a lot of people showing up with them.
I think it goes to save the market, right? So our biggest area growth within NMRA and NMCA has been in True Street and our Hemi Challenge and our Hemi Shootout, and it's just you have the OEs, their approach to drag racing over the last 10 years or has been positive for them, right? You had drag car programs with the Cobra Jet, Copo, and Drag Pack, and Hellcat and Demon. I mean, the Demon whole launch. I mean, there was, I want to say the statistics on the Demon launch was over 1 billion impressions on the fact it's a 9-second car. They didn't say it ran Nürburgring in this time. They didn't say oh, we ran VIR this time on a road course. They use drag racing because you say, hey, look, this car goes 965 with the red key, and race gas, and right. Myself in New York, oh, I know what 965 is. Someone in California, oh yeah, 965. Totally get it. That's fast. 808 horsepower. And I think you look at how drag racing has been presented by the OEs over the last 10 years and that positive effect. And we're seeing that, right? They excited the market, they produced fantastic products, and that trickle down effect to the street car guy. Now we're seeing that on drag strips, right? So their warranty is up. Maybe they paid off the car. That's why all of these aftermarket companies are just moving massive amounts of parts for the late model vehicles because we've had this surge from the factories for it. I mean, a performance pack Mustang goes 11s. You put a supercharger on and you got a low 10-second car. And so I think seeing all the street car stuff, it's a byproduct of what we've seen over the last decade that's been building and brewing, despite the fact that drag strips are going out of business. Fighting challenges that way. Real estate market's so expensive. So yeah, I mean, it's hard for these tracks to stay open sometimes when they're looking at that money or retirement. But on the flip side, drag racing, I think, is as big as it's ever been, maybe bigger.
It's funny you mention true street classes and what, NMCA and NMRA do. You have the Street King class, you have the Rumble class, you have all these different classes and the Hemi Challenge. And then what's funny is I see some of the same cars at these street car takeover events that I see at your guys' events. So
Yeah.
to me, that shows that there's a lot, like, people just want to get out and race. And when you give them what a good program, a good layout, they're going to come do it. And I think that the streetcar stuff, I think you're going to see an explosion in growth, even more in the next couple of years.
Sure. I mean, the cars become more affordable. Like you can go pick up an 05 to 09 Mustang or 2010 Mustang, a 3-valve car. You can pick those up pretty reasonable. The secondhand market is always been a great driver in performance because you can go either pick it up as a second car or a younger person getting into the sport and hobby can afford to do it. When I grew up, it was the Fox Mustang, but you can go, it was the pizza guy's car, right? Because the pizza delivery guy could afford to buy a Fox Mustang, and then, well, pizza guy can't go buy a Mustang anymore. But you know what? That older modern muscle car, is affordable. Kind of that new generation, kind of that 05 Mustang really, or even the 03 Cobra, I think is really what launched it in that new style, supercharged, doesn't need to be a drag car to be fast. And yeah, it's playing out over the last 10 to 15 years and just keeps getting better.
Yeah. And it's the opportunities and seeing, like you said, the Hemi Challenge with what you guys do is totally like, every time I go to one of your events, there's a gajillion cars. It seems like everything from like, your local Hemi club guys showing up and just making hits all the way up to guys that take it a little bit more seriously. And they bring some pretty gnarly hardware. And then you go to the streetcar takeover, you see a lot of the same cars. You see more heavily modified cars. It's really cool to see all of this kind of showing that grassroots push is happening. And then I bet if we put some pins in some of these guys, he said, you know what, I think this guy's going to try to go faster. Well, guess what? Another 5-10 years, they might be the next Manny Bajinga. They might be the next Stevie Fast that started out in a street style car and just kept getting faster as they could.
And we've seen that a lot on the the heads up side with NMRA and NMCA. You take limited street, and you look at qualifying list for limited street, and gosh, I think there might be one person or two people that have ever raced heads up before they stepped into limited street, and they were all streetcar people, either a true street car or an index car that decided, hey, I want to go faster, I want to do some class racing. And this was a step that they could get into with their existing vehicle with a new engine combination. And it's great. I mean, you look at Samantha Moore and what she's done, it's just been fantastic. She took her street car and now she turned into a race car, but there's no doubt she's a better racer, smarter, and very, very highly motivated person. But she's done a fantastic job with it. Chad Wendell is another one, a great example of an index racer who stepped into the heads up side. So having that opportunity for racers to transition, for those who want to get serious, we offer that. But if you just want to be the chill streetcar guy, by all means, we've got a great programs for you to fit into and a lot of variety. I think the Hemi stuff, that market just keeps on giving. So, we're at Norwalk next week at Summit Motorsports Park with the NMCA All-American Nationals. I think we have 88 Hemi cars signed up for next week. I mean, it's just it's great. It's great to see it. It's great to see all the demons. It's great to see Scat Packs. These guys. We've got someone who helps them. Who, if you've never drag raced before, we've got someone that's there to help say, hey, we'll answer your questions. We'll take the intimidation factor out of it, and I think we're bringing a lot of people to the sport. It's been fun.
Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break here. And when we come back, we're going to talk radial racing and what we think's going on. So we'll take a quick commercial break here on the Dragzine podcast. We'll be right back. For serious LS engine builds that demand strength and durability under extreme operating conditions, look into Comp Cam's Race XD bushed solid roller lifters. With lightweight modular design and a proprietary bronze alloy roller wheel bushing, Race XD bushed solid roller lifters eliminate the most common cause of failure with a new oiling system that guarantees consistent roller wheel axle lubrication. Learn more at compcams.com, the absolute leader in valve train technology. All right, we're back. And Mike, we've talked about street car racing. We've talked about all kinds of different stuff. And we kind of briefly touched on radial racing. And something I've noticed, I don't know if you've noticed it, but it seems like there's a flattening in the curve, to use a COVID term, if you will, with radial racing. It doesn't seem like it has as much pop as it had. Like the car counts aren't as big. I don't know what it is, kind of radio versus the world is hurting a little bit. Do you think it's due to maturity? Is it something that people can't get parts? What do you think's going on?
I think it's a little bit of everything. I think there's a maturity level to it, like every heads up group faces it. You do it long enough, and the people who are there for the party, the people who are there just be like, oh yeah, this is, we'll go down and have some fun. Maybe they were competitive years ago, but they stuck with it when they didn't become competitive. Those racers tend to fall off or get distracted. Where it's, hey, no prep kings is the big thing. So maybe you lose some there. Maybe you lose some to, limited drag radio, right? So if you remember, limited drag radio was formed when Radio versus the World really, shot up, with the Pro Mods and some of the higher end combinations where LDR was designed to kind of pull it back a little bit. The traditional 484 bore space big block, a smaller turbochargers, and kind of back off that, the unlimited side of it, and make it a little bit more affordable to use the parts you had, and maintenance was a bit less at the time. Now we're seeing limited drag rail get really intense, but the concept was there. So it was like, okay, so the guys that were the racers that maybe couldn't keep up with the Stevie Fast, the Melanie Salemis, and some of those other higher end, they found another place to race, and they dropped into that. And so I think you're seeing a lot of it. And then there's the parts stuff, right? I mean, I know we've lost probably 6 or 7 racers per event, I would say, easy, to part supply problems on the heads up side. And, it may not sound like a lot, but when you start to, look at a big picture, in part supply is a big problem in our industry.
Yeah, that's like, I've been trying to wrap my head around what's going on, because I've been to a few different events, and it's like, it's almost like the car counts have just been kind of weird and all over the place. And I couldn't figure out, and I've been trying to wrap my mind around whether it was, part stuff, guys getting tired of it, guys not wanting to deal with the rules. I mean, you see a lot of banter and whatnot on social media about it. And I was just starting to kind of look at it as, maybe it's starting to get to the point where either it's too expensive or too fast, or a combination of both for some guys, and they just want to do something that's more fun.
Well, again, I think it's multiple reasons as to why. And when you look at where some of the fields are, before you had, this crazy attraction to a lot of pro mod racers who said, hey, I'll swap onto a set of radials, a set of shocks, change some stuff around, and go have some fun. And those guys are just as competitive as the dedicated radial racers. Then you look at it and you say, well, they race pro mod, every weekend, or 3 times a month, and then 3 times a year or twice a year they race a radial race, and they look at it and say, well, these guys are all racing on dedicated radials all the time. Like, how do you keep up with that? And that's I think is a hard part. So I think you lost, some of the racers who jumped in just for fun and it was a novelty deal that, hey, I'll take a shot at this, then realize, whoa, these guys are real sharks. And then you had, like I said, the fun cars that couldn't keep up with the haves and have nots. And if you take Pro 275 and LDR and look who's running that, who used to run RVW, I think you'd see a lot of names and say, okay, well, if you put all three classes together and we're back out to an 80 car field in RVW. So I think you have to look at it as a couple different factors playing against it.
And I think, honestly, limited drag radial is probably overall one of the coolest classes in small tire racing because of the variety. You got the Devil Horse nitrous car, you got Stax twin turbo Monty, you got Pro Charge cars, and again, they look like real cars, and it's cool to see stuff like that, and fans can identify with it.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, yes, I love pro mod racing. Everybody knows me, knows that, but it's fun, and that's kind of what I do enjoy about No Prep Kings and LDR and Pro 275 is that, those are the cars I enjoy watching, and kind of grew up watching through the the early 90s when this whole scene really started to take shape and start to take off nationally. So a lot of that, reminds me of the old days. And, I guess that's an old guy feeling at this point, but yeah, I mean, it's, they're fun. I mean, they've got great character, and the Malibu, I mean, Jason Carter and Mark Mickey's Malibu. I mean, that's iconic. I love that car. I was disappointed when they put it up for sale, but those are the cars I tend to gravitate towards.
Yeah, I'm right there with you as far as like the old school door cars. I like I said, I'm think I'm in the same vein with Love and Pro Mod too, in a Pro Mod setting. Pro Mod on
Right.
radials, I'm not. I, I'm lukewarm on that. But legit cars that you can look at them and they look like something that you could pull from like like a mid 90s kind of look where it's they look like the car they're supposed to look like. You know, I'm perfectly fine with the action being a little bit slower, but with the cars looking right and being competitive and
Yeah,
and getting
it's
down the track all the time.
yeah. I mean, I don't know about getting down the track. I mean, I think that's kind of what I enjoy about small tire racing is that challenge and seeing the racers who step into that challenge and can navigate, the hard track on a hot sunny day. And to me, that's always been the epitome of small tire racing, which is why the back of the track I do enjoy. My friend Carlo and Manny went down to that dig or die, and I was blowing up their phones just to see what was going on, and because it is fun to forces these guys to have to think differently and adapt to something they've never done before, right? That's always been the lore of our outlaw style racing was doing something that's never been done before.
Have you seen any in person the PDRA, their slick tire small class, that Pro Street deal?
Oh yeah, it's great. I mean, but again, it's a full body car. Started off as an OEM style vehicle, and they look the part, and it's like Outlaw 10.5.
Yeah, I went to the Norwalk race, the PDRA race, and that was a good show, front to back, cars constantly going down the track. There wasn't a lot of, the god awful radial tire, reverse rotating, screeching noise, a lot of track prep. There's always action going on. And those cars, it was impressive to watch because most of them all got down the track. There was some going faster than others. There's a little bit of sketchiness, but it was like I said, it reminded me of the old school Outlaw 10.5 freak show stuff. It was awesome to watch.
So about I guess over the winter was I had an op-ed column in Fastest Streetcar magazine talking about Pro Street, and I think it might have been before PDRA had coined their category as Pro Street, but I related everything back to the original Pro Street movement. With Tony Christian and when he had the 57, Stan Shaw's old car, Pat Musey's Popeye, and just how NPK is really gravitated to that style car, even though they're pro level built, but they're still look the part, right? They're still that Pro Street car, And I said, you know, when you walk into a chassis shop, you say, I'm going to build a pro mod car. And they say, okay, they know exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to build a pro mod car. Okay, it's this, this, and this. Okay, so what class do you run? You're going to run, you know, NHRA pro mod. We're going to build it this way. You're going to build a blower car or a turbo car or a nitrous car. We're going to build it this way. Are you going to do, you know, an NMCA or a PDRA class? You know, and they tailor it to a specific version of pro mod, but you don't have that on kind of the Outlaw 10.5 style vehicle or no prep king style vehicle. So what are they? You know, in my mind, they're Pro Street, right? I mean, that's their stock length, you know, plus or minus 1 inch from a factory wheelbase. Most of them are built off factory bodies or, you know, close enough replicas. And I think that's, you know, the phrase Pro Street has never been coined for drag racing. So you could walk into a shop and say, I want to go Pro Street racing, or I want to build a Pro Street car. It's like, okay, Pro 275 would be a Pro Street car. NPK would be a Pro Street car. LDR would be a Pro Street car. You know, obviously PDRA Pro Street, you know, Outlaw 10.5, whatever's still out there would be this quote unquote Pro Street car. And I think, you know, just my warped sense of thought process, you know, like I think what hurts kind of some of the scene is that you walk in, you say pro mod, and you could fit all these other classes. But what do? You walk in and say you want to build a Pro 275 car, but that same car could be used in all these other disciplines. It's still legal. And, and so it was my ploy to say we should be calling these Pro Street cars. And it's that real look that I think a lot of us gravitate towards is out there. It's very much alive.
Yeah, totally. It's really cool to see that kind of the look of those cars, you know, like the old brown sugar Mustang. Like that car is just, oh, it's perfect. Chef's kiss, perfect. Then you got Cadeau with that, you know, sledgehammer truck with a blower on it. Like it's that kind of variety, I think, that will always draw fans. If you put
Yeah.
those cars on a flyer and say, hey, we're gonna have these here, they're gonna be on slicks, they're gonna do wild stuff, people are gonna come check that out.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think there's a lot of great examples out there. Some of these racers have built incredible cars with incredible detail, and it's fun to see everybody's twist on it. You know, it's not a cookie cutter car. You know,
You know, mentioning that right there, cookie cutter twist on cars. We got to talk about Sullivan's car too. That just popped into. I finally saw that car in person up at Norwalk, and when my dad saw it at the NMCA race on the Flow Racing live feed, he was convinced that was a paint job. I'm like, no, Dad, that's a wrap. Trust me, it's a wrap. I see that car in person, and unless you know where to look to tell it's a wrap, you can't tell it's a wrap. But even once you get past that, just that car alone is just, to me, he should get 25 bonus points for every race he shows up to because it's not a cookie cutter car.
yeah, and you know, it's certainly not the first one we've seen, right? Johnny Rocca is the most famous version of it, but no, I mean, Craig's always had a great style to him in how he presents his racing programs, whether it was his super stock car, his stock car, his top dragster, and you know, obviously Barn Burner was just incredible detail and thought into it. And El Mero is an extension of what he's built over the last 10 or 15 years that we've known him. All of his style, all of his flair, and he worked with the right partners to pull it off. You know, you could tell that Larry Jeffers really fed off of the Cholo concept, and it was fun. You know, and Kryptonite Customs the same way. You know, those guys always produced fantastic wraps, and their installation is fantastic. Like you said, you can't even tell, with perfect seams, and everything lines up magnificently. But the detail and into which they took it, and everybody has that he has worked with has fed off his enthusiasm, his excitement, and produced this incredible car. I mean, we had an opportunity to really spend the whole day with him before Michigan, going through the car. Kevin Diassi, who just knocked it out of the park with the photo shoot, checking out the details and really having an opportunity to soak in what they pulled off, and to keep it a secret in this day and age, to have that to where nobody has seen the car, publicly anyway. And it never got out there on the internet, and Craig did a great job in controlling that story, I was worried, he was signed up on Tuesday for the test session for the NMCA race. And it was like, man, someone's just going to snap a shot of this thing and just post it to Facebook. And then that's it. Like Craig's whole buildup is going to be ruined. And everybody respected his wishes of not to put it out there. And, they could take all the pictures they want, just don't send them out and keep it down low. And it worked out really well. And, we shot it Wednesday night before, we opened the gates, and, Kevin spent the entire night editing this thing. I mean, he went to sleep, I think it was like 3:45 in the morning, and just worked all night to get it ready for a launch at 7 a.m. It was fun.
And off of that as well, I saw a couple really cool pictures in your guys' coverage that to me summed up how pro mod should be. And this is what I think that MCA does right. You had Craig's car, and I saw in the same picture, I think he was lined up against Randy Adler, and then I think Chip King's Mustang was there, and then there was another non-typical looking pro mod. Like that right there is what pro mod needs to go back to, not cookie cutter cars, just like all these different deals. I'm like, that to me, that's what made that's what would make pro mod awesome.
I appreciate you giving us credit for that, but it's the racers who do it, not us. They're the ones who build the cars. They're the ones
You guys give
who
them
choose
the
it.
platform for it.
Exactly. And I think you look at Chip King's car, which gosh, I forget who the owner was. Another one-off body. The guy was a Mach 1 fan of that generation.
Leggett's car.
Yes, Leggett. There you go, Terry Leggett. Yep. And it's fun. I mean, it's a blast. Pro mod to me is that exactly like you said, just a unique kind of just over exaggerated looking vehicles, with the big tabletop wings and just this crazy look to it. And there's some part of me that I look at, especially on the NHRA side, because it's so serious. They're all late model Camaros for the aero reasons, and everyone builds a '69 Camaro. So I would love to see more variety, but I get to where it's difficult and expensive, and you have to have a serious passion to be different to pull it off.
I give the NHRA guys a pass to a point, because that when you're racing quarter mile at that level, I mean, you have to have something that honestly is going to be predictable and safe. Let's just put that out there now. And those Camaros, there's a reason why they use those cars. It's because they're stable and safe going almost 2 miles an hour.
I think calling them stable and safe,
Within
all
reason.
are. They all are, right? I mean, they're all stable and safe. I don't think there's one body that's worse than another, but there's the aero advantage. And I remember we did a story on aerodynamics probably about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And I believe it was Bickle who had said that when a guy comes in, he's basically asking just how serious are you? If you like the style, then the '69 Camaro is great. But, I think that the late model Camaro was, gosh, I mean,
it's a couple miles faster.
It was like, he had a time on it. I don't know if it was 01 or 05 quicker. And it's like, well, at that level, you can't give up that 01. I mean, that's qualifying or not qualifying. That's number one or number two, which side of the ladder are you on? And so, as the quarter mile stuff definitely becomes more critical on aero. And it sounds like there is a legitimate advantage to the later model vehicles.
Yeah. I believe it's there's a certain mile an hour advantage too, and that's why a few of the guys even moved from the C7s back to the older Camaros, because there's some advantages there too. Which again, that's what I think elevates NHRA Pro Mod that step above everything else. Like why it's so fast and so gnarly with what those guys do.
Yeah, and it's great, and it's also the access to technology, right? So I don't know, 15 years ago, most people couldn't put a vehicle into a wind tunnel, and now they can. There's several places, I believe, in around the Charlotte area that you can rent and put a vehicle in. I think there's in Michigan. There's third parties that'll do aero work for you. So I think the opportunity to access technology. So you have the chassis builder's experience plus now this technology and all this computer programming, that you can look at it and scale it and do it properly.
We could do an entire show just on pro mod technology, like what goes into it, I think. But we'll save that for another time. But technology wise, what we can talk about is, electric vehicles. The EVs are they're here, they're coming, they're growing. In the non-performance world, they're getting shoved down our throat. Which
Could be a whole show in of itself,
yeah.
but yeah.
And what we'll talk about here is I want to get your take on the potential and what you see performance EVs, where that's going to go. Because I did a story on that plaid Tesla that went like what was it, 918,
920s.
920,
Yeah, yeah.
918 from the factory, which is just, that's pretty awesome. What do you like? Looking in your crystal ball, what do you think is going to happen with EV technology on the performance side of things? Like,
I,
how do you even approach that?
no, I think it's a great question. I think there's a lot of different avenues we can go down, or rabbit holes in talking about it. I think from a strictly performance standpoint, there's no doubt that EV is far superior, and there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be angry I say that, and I'm not saying that because I like it, but I mean, let's take RC racing. Every record for an RC car is held by an electric motor, not a nitro motor. And so I think if you look at it from that standpoint, this is something that hobby has been doing for 40 years. And there's no doubt that EV performance does have an advantage in terms of pure performance. Pikes Peak, who was it? Was it Porsche? I think it was.
Yeah.
Who just absolutely crushed the Pikes Peak record with an EV car because the elevation didn't matter. Bracket racing, an EV should be better. Where I think drag racing kind of goes sideways on this is in two forms. I think the current buyer right now for an electric vehicle most likely doesn't care about drag racing. That's not their cup of tea. And I'm not to say that nobody will do it. I think there are EV owners who are heavily involved in our industry. I mean, Anderson Dick is one of them. Tom Tomlinson over at Holly. These guys are big Tesla fans, and they're great pieces of technology. But for the masses, like, you're not going to go to a Friday night and have a quarter of the cars be EV right now. I just don't see that happening, because I just don't think the current buyer is engaged in our sport. The other side of it, and I don't know, could a drag strip even handle 50 or 100 EVs in the night? I mean, some tracks we can't even get a cell service or internet access, and now everybody's gonna have a plug-in car. What does the infrastructure look like at a racing facility for an electric vehicle? Is that up to snuff? And my gut feeling is telling me right now, definitely not. So I think EV and drag racing is a great novelty. Ford is doing an incredible job with their Cobra Jet. I think they're using it as a great marketing tool. I think the electric Copo a couple years ago was totally cool, and it's fun to see Tesla enthusiasts with this using, like Dodge. The thing went 920s, and it excited our whole market. It's like, because now we have a relatable number of, well, the Tesla Plaid goes 920s. There's a supercar that supposedly goes 8s. They've been testing an 870, 880 car. Where we go from here, I don't know. I don't think you're buying a Tesla Plaid. I know I am not buying a Tesla Plaid, and I'm certainly not buying a supercar. So I don't know where we go from EV in the short term. In the long term, who knows with politics and the infrastructure in the country, and just everything that surrounds the difficulties of converting a fuel guzzling fleet of cars in the United States to all electric. I don't know where that goes.
If I had the money, I would 100% buy a Tesla Plaid right now. 100%. EVs, I've been saying this, I will go on the record to say it right now, is that they fascinate me. Like, I raced nitro RC cars. I remember when the big scale lipo cars came on the market. I drove one for the first time. I was like, this is a lot of fun, but with great power comes great responsibility. And the first time you rip one of those triggers and how quick and fast they accelerate, my mind went to drag racing. I'm like, oh my God, all the cool stuff I could do with this car at a racetrack. I have a terrible idea that Scott Parker shakes his head at me all the time that I think he's terrified I might find a way to make this happen. I want to EV swap a Mustang and build something like that just to show it can be done and have fun with it. Like you said, there's
Yeah.
challenges involved, but in my mind, I would love to build an EV SN95 Mustang just to see what can be done with it.
I saw a vehicle this past weekend on social media where I believe it was an S187 Mustang that had a Tesla drivetrain swapped into it. And I know on the swap side, you're starting to see like Icon Vehicles is offering, EV options on their awesome line of vehicles. They were at SEMA 3, maybe 4 years ago with that derelict style 40 sedan with an EV in it. I think there's a concern on the aftermarket as to, you've got it could be dangerous, right? Like working with high power electricity is not always a do-it-yourself type of project, and I think there is some concern that swapping could there needs to be a guideline and there needs to be an education on safety for that sort of stuff as well.
Oh, 100%. Electricity, when it bites, it hurts. And the more power you put behind, like,
I don't think hurt would be an emotion that you would feel anymore, because I think it would be the end for
yeah,
the type of power these guys have.
yeah,
So
yeah, that's
yeah.
that's an understatement to say the least.
Yeah.
You're definitely gonna you're gonna have a bad time. And I think that's a 100% a valid concern. And again, it just, to me, it adds to the intrigue on where this is going to go, because hot rodders are going to do hot rod things.
Right.
You do, our industry and our people are the last ones you want to try to corner and say, well, we're going to take this away from you and you can't have performance cars. Well, some dude in Alabama is going to go, hold my beer, watch this, and take a Tesla and make it into a race car. And I'm cautiously optimistic we're going to see some good things come out of this.
Right. And I think right now, you look from an pure aftermarket standpoint, and the dynamic of it does change considerably, because you say, okay, well, what can you do to an EV? Well, you've got a controller, right? So the controllers is going to be a big topic or a big modification. Then what else? Suspension. There's really no drivetrain. So tires. And that's, so I think from an industry standpoint, I think we have to be, really cognizant of, where does the aftermarket go from here on this EV side, but then you look at carburetors, and, carburetors, while EFI is made a huge jump in the last 10 years, people still use carburetors. People still tinker with them. People still utilize them. NASCAR, when did NASCAR switch over and NHRA Pro Stock? I mean, what was that? It was less than 10 years ago. So I think there'll always be a place for fossil fuel burning race engines, and even the streetcar market. I think you're going to have a lot of holdouts, and there's a lot of vehicles on the road. It's just, where are we in 20, 30, 40 years?
Exactly.
As an industry. I don't know if I'll be around in 40 years, but but we do have to look at that, and what is, even on the repair side. There's a lot less parts to repair on an EV car. So what's the repair industry look like? I mean, I think, as a country, there's a lot of change that would be taking place to make this switch over to EV. It's not as simple, I think, as people think.
I 100% agree. And we're going to take a commercial break here real quick. But when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more NMCA, how COVID affected it, where it's going in the future, and a whole lot more. So stay tuned. Real quick commercial break here on the Dragzine podcast.
Moser Engineering has been racing across 5 decades and through 3 generations of family. We have also been supporting sportsman ranks since the beginning with our lightning fast 2-day turnaround time. Everything we make, from axles, rear ends, suspension, brakes, and more, are made right here in the USA with one goal in mind: so you can win. To learn more, check us out online at moserengineering.com.
All right, we're back. And Mike, we've talked about a wide range of different items here, and I wanted to get into, you're part of the NMCA and MRA family with ProMedia, and we worked together on over your shoulder the burnout show during COVID, and how the world was an interesting place during those times. And I'm a firm believer in that you need to learn lessons from things that have happened. And a lot of people could go to the negative side of COVID, but I think that there's a positive side of what businesses and organizations could have learned from COVID. What did you guys learn from COVID that you can apply now going forward?
A lot of stuff. ProMedia is we're known for our events, and that's our core product, but we're also a media company as well. So I think on both sides of the business, there were a lot of lessons learned, and what COVID provided us was the time to figure it all out, because once this thing starts moving, it's hard to get the train to stop. And you've got your next event or your next season, there's always something, and we never had an opportunity to hit the pause button and address a lot of topics that we've talked about in internal meetings, but we're never able to execute. And one of them on the media side, or which relates to the event side, was we've always wanted it to update our websites, and took a deep dive into the websites. And content wise, we were very comfortable with what we produce in terms of racer news, communicating about the series, communicating about a lot of different, whether it's parking and stacking, all of these bits of communication with customers, whether it be a fan or a racer or sponsor. But how do we deliver that through our websites? And so it took us, an opportunity to sit back and look and say, okay, this is what we like, this is what we don't like, and then who's going to be our partner to hire to revamp all of our websites, to communicate better. How can we do it better? How can we, produce, the similar level of content, but present it in a cleaner fashion, more user-friendly fashion, make it easier for people to find the information. And I think that took us, a little while, the downtime, to have that opportunity to recognize that, and interview companies, because we have a complete custom platform, and find the right company that understood what we did and what we're trying to do and accomplish. And it's a year in the making. I mean, it's not an overnight, put something together on Wix and send it. So we found a great group to work with, and we're almost there. I think we're going to launch in the fall, maybe after the seasons, I think is what we're looking at, hoping for. But COVID gave us an opportunity to really take a deep dive and analyze, our three websites and how we can do it better for our customers. And that was huge. And it's something we're still working on today, but we didn't have the time before to do it, and now we did.
Yeah, and that's very interesting how you guys approach that, and I think it drives home the point that people only see the event, and being part of the process of being a small part of an event process when we with speed video and flow racing. I understood that there's like so much more that goes on than just
Yeah.
that. There's a lot more thinking that goes into it, and that you it's time is a very precious item, and you just don't have time to really think about how to change a lot of the stuff when you're moving at speed to get events done.
Right. And that was, time was the biggest, to take a step back, think things through, and analyze, you know, all aspects of the company, because now we have the time to do it, and we have the opportunity, and you're never going to get this opportunity again, or at least we hope not. And that was a huge, I think, for us, especially on the media side and content side. And then on the event side, the same thing, which is all tied together. How can we produce things better, quicker, and deliver that, that content to our customers in a more effective way. So what's the message, and how do we deliver it? And and I think working with Raleigh on a lot of things, we've got some great, some great changes coming on how we deliver, whether it be race schedules or just bits to make, a racer and other customers' life easier when they plan to attend an event.
Now, on the racing side of things, kind of again looking at the market and what's going on. do you guys see yourselves potentially adding subtracting classes in the future, changing things up? How do you guys approach that? That you can
Um,
talk about within reason, because I know that there's.
I mean, it goes back to the maturity level. I think we're 22 or 23 years in business, so we've got a maturity level to where we've got an established and set of classes that we do try and always tweak to keep relevant. But we also we're not afraid to do specialty stuff, and we are looking at a lot of different changes for next year in terms of adapting to markets. Um, you know, not to say we had 540 cars at our last event. Like we're not. It's not like we need too many changes. We do have very effective, I think, um, lineup to give a great variety. I think we definitely offer the most variety out of any racing group, your sanctioned promoter anywhere, right? So you can buy a car on Saturday morning, show up to our event and compete, or you can build a pro mod and show up on Saturday morning and compete. And I don't there is no other group in racing that offers that entry level and top door slammer in one event. So I think we've got a pretty good range that attracts a wide variety of competitors at all different levels of the sport, and that's been our goal, and a very inclusive. Don't be afraid to come out and race your vehicle, but also cater to a professional level where a pro mod can come out and know when he's running, know when we're finishing, and going into the weekend knowing like, okay, we're going to be hitting the road, by 6 or 7 o'clock on a Sunday night and have a full event behind us.
And I think, you mentioned the specialty event stuff. That's one of the cool things that I think that ProMedia does well, is because there's always, you're going to get X, Y, and Z classes. But then it's like, oh, what's going to be the whipped cream or the sprinkles at this event, whether it's nostalgia
Right.
super stock cars, small tire cars. Is there a method to your madness on how you guys approach that?
We have the consistency side of it to where we have our 10 or 11 championship categories. That's consistent. The True Street side, where it's kind of a fit all, the Hemi side, and then we use, especially on the Mustang side, the opportunity to have specialty categories at some of our bigger events, not every event, and not be a championship class, to try and touch on, hey, we just have Mustang guys who want to come out and make runs. Well, we got a class for you. Maybe True Street doesn't fit you, and so we use those as kind of the special forces to tailor, to a specific niche or a hot segment, and then when that dies out, which they always do, then move on to something different and have that opportunity, because our goal is to get as many people in the gate, have some fun, and experience our brands.
And the All American Nationals, you're going to have the Donkmaster guys there, and I saw them up at the Night Under Fire, and we have an article coming out on the series he's putting together. Those cars are legit. Like, it is. I love them. It's crazy. It's
So
wild.
if you rewind the show, half hour, 45 minutes ago, whatever, what did I say that small tire racing is, right? That the ability to adapt to, not much traction. Well, what's Donk? It's the same thing. And Sage has helped, Donk drag racing has been around, but Sage is that charismatic individual who's kind of put his arms out and kind of pulled them all in. And, just an incredible, enthusiastic person for this type of racing. And we're excited to have him. I mean, it's different. I know some of our more traditional, competitors kind of were like, what's this all about? And it's like, well, think about this guy has a turbocharged LS, and his goal is to get down the track as fast as possible on a tire that it should not be done, right? What did we talk about earlier is, doing something that shouldn't be done. And I think at the core of it, I really believe that what his goals are is the core of, the outlaw NMCA style racing, or what we began with in the early 90s, is do something different that someone looks at it and is like, that shouldn't be possible. And it'll be fun. I mean, he's got his Skittle pack that's coming up. It'll be a blast.
I was talking with him and checking out some of these cars, and it was one of the green Caprices that they had. Wild looking hood, exhaust, screamer pipe coming out of the center, pops the hood on it. Mind you, the car's still 100% street legal. It's got AC, makes 1,400 horsepower, and just drive, like you said, drives like a dream. And it's on these giant tires. And my mind starts thinking, I've seen this before with some of these cars, people look at it, they just see the wheels and they think it's ridiculous. Watch these cars when they run on a normal like tire combo, and they are impressive. I've seen that happen, and it's interesting. To me, it's really, really interesting, and
Yeah,
more power to them for trying to pull this off.
I mean, it's great. I mean, big wheel racing is fun. The personalities are very dynamic.
Oh, huge.
The vehicles. I mean, if you were to put blinders on and just concentrate on the engine compartment, it's the same turbos, it's the same cylinder heads, it's the same intake manifolds, it's the same pistons, the same rods, the same crank. And here's a group that's putting more excitement into drag racing and bringing out new competitors into organized drag racing. And I think it's a fantastic movement. Hey, look, it's not for everybody. You may not enjoy it, but you have to, I believe, respect it and and realize like, hey, they are doing something fun and fast. And really, there's no rule book, or not even rule book, but the way of doing things, right? Like you build a small tire car today. It's like, okay, you go buy this shock, this tire, this extension, and you plot a curve on, your power management, and you're kind of in the ballpark. You go over to big wheel racing with Sage and his crew, and it's like, okay, there's really no playbook on how to take 1,400 horsepower and stick it on this tire. And that's fun to see them figuring it out and being inventive and a challenge.
Yeah, it's cool to see people still doing stuff like that, and their attitude is like, if you don't like it, that's fine, whatever. We like what we're doing. We're gonna do what we want to do. Whatever.
Again, they're putting cars down drag strip, putting fans in the stands, and that's good for our entire industry.
Yes. Now, Mike, our time here is coming to a close, and I like to always have fun with my guests, throw different questions at them. I don't remember which ones I've thrown at you before, but this time I'm going to give you the option to build the ultimate drag racing series. You can pick any cars, any classes, any era. What's it going to look like? What are you going to build?
Ooh, well, I'm already in a drag racing series. Is this bad to say that I'm actually big into off-road racing right now in the Baja 1000?
No, hey,
if
you want to put that series together, I will.
I don't. It's hard. My thoughts always wander every day, right? And I another op-ed column that I did in Fastest Street Car, I did talk about kind of the fast series cars. Are you familiar with those guys?
Oh yes.
So in my column, my recent column, I talked about building like a what would be a fast series for a traditional 5.0 Mustang from like New York, New Jersey. And it was essentially a play off their concept, but you had to have like, well drag lights, which Kyle Fickler will make fun of me over that. An S-trim supercharger, and then externally the engine would have to look factory. So kind of not exactly stock like the fast cars, but stock for what a 1990s version of a Mustang was, with an S-trim supercharger from Vortec, and kind of looked the part. And I think that would be fun. It'd probably be like a 9-second class, or I don't know, but yeah, it'd be fun to kind of build it retro style, long runner intake, and that sort of thing.
Think about this for a second, Mike. You got the nostalgia nitro car. Someday there might be nostalgia Mustang racing.
Maybe.
It could be that. You could have a New York stock class. We always say around here when people ask what's up with the car, oh, it's Columbus stock, and people knew that what that meant. So that could be the day where we're the white-haired old men talking about back in our day, pointing.
Yeah, everybody's looking at RC component wheels and all these other wheel companies, and I'm like, man, give me a set of centerline auto drags polished on a Fox body or a set of drag lights, and I'm happy.
Yeah, it's that look you grew up with,
Yeah, the fuel pressure gauge on the cowl, that's always quintessential Mustang.
The cruising spot down in college, it was always, your classic Fox bodies rolling through with the weld drag lights, the big old thumping cam. Mind you, they installed the cam. They never had the car tuned, but it sounded rowdy. And
No, they couldn't tune them back then. It was fuel pressure and in your distributor, and that was your tune. Or you adjusted your Pro M mass air meter. You turned it to get a different signal, but that was the extent of our tuning back in the old days.
Yeah, they're rolling through. So yeah, I definitely pick up what you're laying down there, and I think there's a market there. Maybe you guys need to jump ahead of that with the NMRA and start like grooming something towards that. Like a cross between what Queen Scott does with the Sega class, where it's really strict like appearance rules and stuff like that. There's a market there.
Well, I joked with Mike Washington, who we collaborate on a lot of fun and stupid things together, and I told him, we've got Pure Evil, I think it's Engine 3.0 coming together. And I said, after Pure Evil, I think we need to do this concept I threw out there in one of his rolling chassis just to do it, not a class, but just do it and say, hey, we're showing up here. If you want to be an idiot like us, come have some fun.
That is, yeah, that's my sort of like kind of bad idea, fun stuff. This is what we're going to do. Come join our merry band of bad decisions and come have fun.
Exactly. I think it would be a good decision, not necessarily a bad one.
Well, I've got this theory about building race cars that I've learned is they always start out that it's going to be a good decision, and by the time you're done, you're like, why am I doing this to myself? What is wrong with me?
You need to build different cars then.
My problem is just getting, I made the mistake of trying to build one project car during COVID that turned into two project cars because parts availability and everything else. It's like, yeah, you get to the point where, an engine is sitting a few hours away because there's not enough truck drivers to get your engine to you. It's a lot of fun. I love it. Look at my smile. A lot of fun.
You're wearing a hat, otherwise I say you have some gray hair.
Yeah, I have no hair. I started out, I used to have hair down to my shoulder, and now I'm bald as all get out. Well, Mike, our time here has come to an end, and I like to give my guests their opportunity, of course, to pull the old John Force and plug sponsors and tell people where to find them at. So the floor is yours, my friend. Tell people where they can find you, what you got going on, and all that fun stuff.
Well, obviously nmradigital.com and nmcadigital.com. Check them out. We've got 2 events left on the NMCA. We've got our NMRA World Finals in Holly Intergalactic Ford Festival, which is going to be just the most incredible event, which we added off-road racing as well, at top of the drifting and the drag racing. So it's a complete motorsport mayhem, and I highly suggest it. Whether you're a Ford fan or not, it's a very unique experience at Bowling Green, and we're going to use the property very uniquely this year, and it'll be fun.
I can attest that the intergalactic deal is a lot of fun. Went last year for the first time, even during COVID. It was packed out. A lot of really cool stuff to check out. So that definitely gets the old Dragzine stamp of approval for people to check out.
Cool. Well, we'll see you guys at the races.
Yes, and I've got to thank all my sponsors, of course, Performance Distributors, Airflow Research, ProCharger, Holly, MSD, Flowmaster, Mosier Engineering, Comp Cams, Edelbrock, Fuel Air Spark Technology, Manley, JE Pistons, and Dart. Mike, talk about come to the races. Hopefully, God willing, and the creek don't rise. I'll have my pile at the NMCA finals, but say some small motorsports pairs for me that we can get this car done.
Well, good luck, man. We'll see you out there.
See you soon, Mike.
All right, man.